for coming.
It's my pleasure to be here.
We're really grateful to have you kick off this semester. So one of the first things that I want to ask, and that I think ends up being so personal to architects, is where you found the unexpected joy in your career.
Well, I think I came to architecture just thinking about the sort of decision to study. I was a history major in undergrad, and I think I started learning about architecture through history. I was a history major, and I think that led me to kind of travel the world and looking at buildings. And eventually, I went to graduate school, and all along until I sort of found myself with my own practice, I was always just thrilled to learn about the world and learn about history through architecture. I felt like it helped me. It gave me insight into places and people, and just sort of a layer of culture that I think, sometimes almost invisibly shapes the way we understand place. But anyway, I think as I've gone on to practice, I guess there's sort of two really thrilling kind of moments in the process of designing buildings. I think in many ways, the sort of everyday work of an architect, it's hard work. It's complex problems. There's a lot of people involved. A lot of moving parts with budgets and structure and technology. But I think the moments where you keep your head down and you work, these sort of moments of epiphany and where things start resolving. I think it's just, it's still thrilling, and we've had our practice for 20 years, and so it's kind of those just staying the course and believing that you're going to go from all these things that seem disconnected to something that synthesizes is really fantastic, and it makes me so excited every time. And I think also, I'm pretty involved in the construction part of our practice, and so being able to see the thinking and the design phases come to fruition in the field is also pretty thrilling. And I think we work hard. We try to create great documents for construction documents, but we also love working with builders and our clients where there's still a kind of openness. We're always discovering things during construction, and not radical change, but there's always a sort of responsive way we like to engage the site. And so I think it's it's a long process, and things we learn in one building project go into the next one, and I think it's a patient person's game. So I think today's world seems to be faster, and we engage technology, and everything seems to kind of want to be more instantaneous. But I think great architecture, it just doesn't come fast, and I think you need to enjoy that process.
That's really great to hear.
It will pay off. Yeah.
I didn't know that you were a history major in undergrad. That's really fascinating. I think there's a shift actually in more people going back to school for architecture without a prior degree. It must have helped you a lot in knowing architectural styles through and through, and kind of the society and the culture that comes along with it. Where do you see architecture today in terms of style?
Well, I have to say that we don't normally use that word when we think about our work and the kinds of kind of trajectories of architecture that we're interested in. I think you probably know that we curated the Chicago Architecture Biennial in 2017, and the title of it was called Make New History. So I would say that, this is not a generalization, but it's more sort of where we are interested and where we see a new generation, a sort of relatively on the younger generation of architects, trying to engage, important disciplinary problems through understanding the history of places and works of architecture that they find meaningful to their work. So I don't think that, I think the title of the biennial was Make New History, which is the riff on an Ed Ruscha book, and it was a book that was quite thick and small but thick, and around the kind of edge of the pages, it said Make New History, and all the pages were blank. So there's a sort of play on history and new and make. And so, it's not about a sort of nostalgic idea of the past, but it's really about understanding work that we find powerful is work that understands a kind of lineage of ideas and takes things forward looks to the future by understanding what's work that's come before it. And I think that for us, one of the reasons we wanted to do that biennial and bring architects together around a platform of ideas related to history was that, especially for young architects and students, through social media and so many different kind of information delivery systems, the world is coming at you faster. Accessibility to images and content is it's just pervasive. So one was the idea that how do you interrupt that sort of flow of seemingly almost unhierarchical information and create a platform for ideas, and to say that, I think because of that instantaneousness of information, how you can work with history in a more malleable way it's much more fluid. And so I think architects are looking at different eras in history in a much more, it's a much kind of looser framework. It's not like we're all looking at the Beaux-Arts or something. And I think that's, there's a level of rigor and at the same time invention that is working, that architects are interested in within that framework. And I think that it's important that you said that there's so many things happening. It's hard to sort of categorize what's happening. And I think that's why it was also important for us to do something like a biennial, to make a platform for ideas that architects could come and debate. I think it's very easy, and also through those techniques of, mediums of social media to speak in an echo chamber. And I think it's really important through schools, through, programs like lecture series, biennials, to bring people together around not only shared ideas, but to debate. And so I don't know that I think there's one style, but I think there's I think that there's both a kind of way of practicing that engages ideas and engages one another as practitioners. It's more urgent than ever today.
You spoke a little bit about the studio culture,
Mm-hmm.
or alluded to it at least, being very open and just a place for talking about these issues,
Mm-hmm.
whereas in practice it's less sort of obvious. But I know that you've been at Rice
Mm-hmm.
and UCLA, and
Mm-hmm.
your husband, I believe, is now involved heavily with the GSD, and so you both are heavily involved in the
Mm-hmm.
academics
Mm-hmm.
of architecture.
Mm-hmm.
And the upcoming generation. Do you see anything happening in the
Mm-hmm.
upcoming generation that you find hopeful or exciting,
Mm-hmm.
or that kind of defines you in a different way
Mm-hmm.
than you see them being
Mm-hmm.
defined?
Well, I think that, I think architecture is, it's a profession historically of sort of old men. It takes a long time. People sort of hit their stride, maybe at a different age than perhaps other professions. So I guess that I don't think at one level, maybe there's more women involved in the profession today, but I still think that it's, I think to master the craft of architecture takes a long time. So I think that on the one hand, I think that, we spoke about it just a minute ago, but somehow patience is something that's important, like knowing that there's a lot to learn every day, and if I'm not learning something every day, I feel like I'm not working hard enough. So I think that, and I do think Mark and I have been teaching for a long time, and we do sometimes notice that there's a sort of impatience with younger, students today about kind of what they want and what they're looking for, and sometimes that's really good. It sort of becomes a kind of agitating attitude. But on the other hand, mastering skills is something that does take time. I think what Mark and I started our practice in Southern California, which I think is a relatively, sort of generous and open place for young architects to start, because I think people, it's probably not one of the easier places to build. It's not freezing cold. It's there's a lot of land, so people are a little bit less maybe paranoid about investing in younger architects. But I think that we had a lot of chances to do kind of small scale work, but we really took it seriously. We wanted to learn how to build, and whatever projects we found that were interesting clients, we would take them on. And I think, so I think it's in a way almost, I feel the profession is getting increasingly competitive, but I think young architects, and we saw this in the biennial, which we intentionally wanted to have a wide range of generations as part of, but it certainly skewed on the younger side, that I think young architects are, are quite entrepreneurial, and they, a lot of them teach, so there's a certain kind of stability for them, but they, tend to invent projects, they collaborate in kind of weird or almost amorphous, maybe groups of collaborators that bring opportunities for them that maybe wouldn't happen if you're just the sort of sole architect in your studio. And I think that's really exciting. I feel like becoming a producer in the sense of, making a project happen. I think, people of our generation, we were doing that, but I think younger architects are even more ambitious about it. And I think that's great, because I think the sort of patronage model is always going to be there, especially for big projects that require a lot of resources. But I think as cultural institutions sort of spread out into cities more, I just spent some time at the Contemporary Austin today and learned about all these different kind of scales they're working in the city. And I think architects can do that too. Sometimes you shouldn't wait. You should come to an idea and activate it through, engaging with people, politicians, whatever it is. So I think that's something that is, an exciting, perhaps new dimension of the practice that I see happening.
Yeah, we do talk a lot about collaboration
Yeah.
and interdisciplinary efforts in our generation.
Yeah, yeah.
You mentioned scale
Mhm.
In architecture,
Mhm.
and obviously it's easier to start out with the smaller scales,
Right.
just because there are these things that you can learn along the way.
Right.
But what has been your experience with that shift in scale and being able to shift in both scale but also program or building type?
Yeah, I think this is another thing we still really kind of run into in our practice when we're interviewing for projects, is sort of the American model is always, you need to demonstrate you've done 5 museums before you get a museum. And, probably just some kind of alchemy of life and who we are as people and such. But, this was a conscious decision, which was we stopped teaching for a while because we felt like if we really wanted to build our practice, we needed to invest in practice. And so we had some connections with some very kind of visionary people related to the arts who had a foundation that was originally based in Rome. And we were commissioned by them to do a number of projects, from exhibition design to master plans and the design of a winery, all in different parts of Italy. And the projects, the master plan was completed, but first phases haven't been built yet. But those projects were instrumental in us being able to come back to America. And soon after that, we got the Menil Drawing Institute project. So that, again, was a leap on the part of the institution. We had been involved in the arts for a long time, but we hadn't done a museum. And I think what we've generally been pretty good at doing is somehow either us being good at, or somehow it just happened that clients that were, they saw us as sort of moving towards a new plateau in our career, and they wanted to be part of that. There's certain kinds of clients that want you to demonstrate, it's a bulletproof portfolio of experience, and others find that sort of joining us as on a journey to make a building is part of what will make the building great. And we really believe that. And I think if you look at the careers of many architects, there's typically a moment you can identify where they start kind of repeating themselves. They get known for something and they keep doing that. And that's certainly a viable business model and a career path. But I think the scale of our office, we try to keep it such that we're always kind of being fresh about our approach to our work. And it is harder as the buildings get bigger, they're more complex, you need different levels of expertise. But there are models of Herzog and de Meuron or Peter Zumthor or maybe Todd and Billy as another example, where they're working on big projects, but there is a kind of way in which each project sort of has a signature that's just specific to that project. And I think that's a risk that we take and our clients take with us. But I think it also, clients don't always understand, is that sort of freshness, or in a way one could say inexperience with a particular type, is what challenges us to work even harder. And so I think that's the kind of thrilling thing that brings a charge to a project that you just can't replicate if you're doing it again and again and again.
That's really exciting
Yeah.
to hear also. Yeah.
I think what it means though is you have to work like twice as hard.
Right.
Yeah.
True.
So, but I think that's where you really learn and get to really good work. So we're not afraid of that.
That's wonderful. Yeah. You also have, as you mentioned, the designing abroad, designing outside of your cultural experience, and maybe Italy isn't so far out of your cultural experience.
Right.
But that's something else that you all have done a lot of. How do you find that different than doing work in LA or more sort of close to home?
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, speaking of your generation, and you mentioned that you see more and more collaborations, maybe in school and out of school, and in like 2007, 2008 was the first time we were invited to be part of a group project, and it was a master plan. It was a project in Western China. It was a master plan that was designed by Ai Weiwei and Herzog and de Meuron, and then it was this sort of crazy project that included inviting 100 so-called young architects from around the world to design a house. And we designed our house, and in the end, none of the projects were built, but it was an incredible experience to be, I was the one that went on both of the trips, and to be in this very foreign place with all of, we made a lot of friends. And those folks became collaborators of ours on projects. Many of them are quite far afield. And so I think we've been pretty lucky. I mean, we've done some sort of, fast and furious projects in China that have been built, and they've been sort of less satisfying for us just because the quality hasn't been great. But generally our projects outside of the US have been part of projects with other architects. So there's a kind of level of craft and care and just communication with our clients through these architects that has made it, there's a lot of weird foreignness that's unfamiliar, but I think the commitment to the work has always been there, and I think that's what really counts. So, we did it, one of our earliest projects was in Argentina, and kind of a different scenario, but it was an architect that had worked with us, who was Argentinian. He graduated from UCLA and then worked for us for a couple of years and then went back, and we had the chance to build this house and partnered with Diego. And I think that was, again, another example where he had a lot of expertise in that region in terms of construction. And, we find that both, I think because of our approach to each project, we try to be quite open. We don't have a kind of systematic methodology or material system that we like. That we need to, we're very open to learning new systems, whether it's, for that project, it was our first cast-in-place concrete house. And we chose it not because necessarily it was our first choice, but it was the kind of indigenous method of building, and we knew the best craftsmen, that's what they would build in. So we figured, let's embrace that and let's make that work for us. So I think that's also, part of the success, that one needs to be open to methods of working and communicating in foreign places. So you're not like pushing the boulder uphill, but you're really trying to harness a certain kind of energy and expertise in a way that works within our language of making architecture, but doesn't work against something that is a tool that's that's there to be used, which is a certain kind of knowledge. So that's kind of, sometimes it's a bit of a monkey wrench, but I think that's just part of the input, and we try to embrace it.
Yeah, just more hard work.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Speaking of challenges, there are obviously challenges and opportunities in the future. And where do you think those opportunities and challenges might take architecture in 20, 30 years from now?
Well, that's a big question. I don't know. I mean, I think the role that technology is playing in our discipline is pretty impactful. So, I think on the other hand, when you're in the field and you're building stuff and you realize that there's a lot of people that are, the guy nailing this nail into the wall are very, unsophisticated. And so I think there's especially in America. I mean, we have a lot of colleagues, let's say, in places like Switzerland or in other Northern European countries where I think the craft of building is already really high, much higher than we experience here in America. And Mark especially spent a number of years in Switzerland, and I think it was very evident to us that a lot of the experience he had there was not really translatable to America. So, I think it's just, that's a longer conversation about why that is. I think the level of investment and the kind of longevity of buildings in America is just, they're not thought of as kind of multiple generation buildings. People just want a fast return. So I think that's a question mark. I think that we are involved with technology companies too, and we also realize there is an expectation of increasing speed in designing things for people that are working at very fast pace, and growing and all of that. And I think that as architects, we should still be aspiring to make enduring places. I think that it's important to embrace, changing cultural and social structures, and technology is certainly a big part of that. But, while there's still physical places that we all inhabit, I think we should be leaders in, educating people that we work with about the importance of what we do and the way that architecture can, benefit society. I think it still can, and so I don't know what to say will happen in 30 years, but I think that we should, for us, that's also why we want to teach, is that we want to be, working with clients that are sort of at the top of their professional practice, but we also want to be working with students. I think the more that we can intertwine those cultures, the better off we'll all be about the importance of what we're doing. And I think that there are still a lot of hierarchies in our discipline. Partly because of this thing that it takes so long to master what you're doing, but I think that's a problem. I think that we should really be open to young people contributing to what we do, and young people should be really wanting to learn about from people that have had more experience. And I was just talking with Nicole about like the preceptorship here at the school, or the what do you guys call it? Professional residency. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we've had a lot of success with those kinds of programs, and we love having students be part of our office, and we love when they say, God, we just never thought that that's how one would talk with a client about a problem, like revealing the questions that you have about their project and the concerns, or that there's really a dialogue about work. It's not, we don't come out of school and many years of practice with the answers. I think we should come with good questions.
Well, that's probably a good place to end my questioning. Those were, very enlightening responses, I think, and we really appreciate your time. Great. And we're excited to see your lecture.
Great, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.